Hello, this is Steve, and I'm reading from The Wine Enthusiast. Mile High Mexico. Innovative winemakers are reimagining the future of Mexico's high-altitude vineyards. The oldest winery in the Americas is Casa Madero in Mexico's Coahuila state. It sits at 5,000 feet in elevation at a latitude similar to the hottest spots of the Sahara Desert, on soil dotted with dinosaur bones. When Spanish colonizers arrived, they found an abundance of wild grapes, natural springs, and a semi-arid mountain valley with a continental climate that can feel Mediterranean thanks to mild winters and a long growing season. Spain's King Philippe didn't expect to find a world-class grape-growing region here, but once he did, he decreed it a center of wine and brandy production using imported Spanish varieties. It was the first place in the Americas where Vitis vinifera grapes were successful. Northern Baja California, centered around the Valle de Guadalupe, accounts for an estimated 80% of the country's wine. Despite its proximity to the ocean, vineyards there are high altitude by most other wine regions' criteria, ranging from 1,000 feet to nearly 2,300 feet. Yet 16 Mexican states make wine commercially, and attention is shifting to the historic higher altitude regions like Guanajuato and Querétaro's estates in the center of the country, and Coahuila in the north. There, a new generation with a bold vision of crafting wines of character with minimal intervention, and the rest of the world is noticing. Casa Madero has been making wine since 1597, but only in recent years is Coahuila's region's wine industry boomed. The town of Parras, short from Parras de la Fuente, or the grapes of the wellspring, has become a tourist hub between the business capital of Monterrey and the industrial city of Torreon. Our combination of altitude, continental climate, and low humidity is an ideal ecosystem for all types of grapes, says winemaker Mateo Sutrero of Rivero Gonzalez Winery, aka RG/MX, in Parras. They practice low-intervention winemaking and ecological viticulture that respects the native flora, reuses organic matter as compost and mulch, and promotes what he calls living soil. Originally from Argentina, with vineyard experience throughout the Americas, he finds the region uniquely suited to natural winemaking. The advantages are remarkable in terms of grape health, water quality, and the wide temperature range that helps retain natural acidity, complexity, and balance. Mile High Parras is, in fact, considered a low-elevation part of the region. 2 hours east, in the mountains above the city of Saltillo, a vertiginous region known as the Sierra del Artiega reaches over 7,000 feet. Walking the vineyards too quickly there can make you short of breath. Sometimes called La Suiza Mexicana, the Switzerland of Mexico, its frosty peaks stand in sharp contrast to the desert plains of Parras. Located in the Sierra de Artiega, Bodegas del Viento and Bodega del Cedros are among the highest wineries in the world. There's a lot of variety between Parras and Artiega, says Carlos Solares, a wine industry consultant based in Monterrey. In Artiega, the cooler climate is spectacular for reds. Phenolic maturity is reached before alcoholic ripeness, and they harvest as late as November. In Parras, reds can be jammier. Whites are starting to stand out more, with Albarino, Verdejo, Torrontés, and Chenin Blanc showing up alongside Chardonnay and Sauvignon Blanc. Red blends are a hallmark of Mexico, since the country doesn't have appellations that restrict what grapes can be used. Rolling harvests during the long growing season give even more flexibility to those who put in the work. The most planted red grapes in Coahuila are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah, and Tempranillo, though Cabernet Franc, Malbec, Caladoc, Pinot Noir, and Petit Verdot are becoming more prominent. The best Coahuila wines avoid chemical corrections and correct in the vineyard, says Solares, not just blending different varieties, but by blending the same grape at different ripeness levels. They can maximize the phenolic complexity while maintaining acidity and freshness. Guanajuato and Querétaro. Almost 400 miles south of Coahuila lies El Bajío, the lowland, a fertile mountain valley whose 5,000-foot elevation is dwarfed by the surrounding peaks. A few hours northwest of Mexico City, it's home to the eponymous capitals of Querétaro and Guanajuato states, both with emerging wine scenes. Most foreign vineyards to Guanajuato come to the tourist town of San Miguel de Allende, where wine seems a distant concern from its rooftop cocktail bars. Just 45 minutes north, however, is the pueblo of Dolores Hidalgo, where the Mexican War of Independence was declared in 1810. After over a century of Spain banning wine and brandy production except for religious use, because it threatened Spanish imports, the restoration of vineyards in this region was seen as both economic and metaphorical in independence. Guanajuato has become known for natural wine thanks to two influential wineries, Garambullo, founded in 2017 by Mexican and Bosnian couple who have mentored several winemakers in the area, and Octagano, which makes wine in buried clay vessels, a sort of Mexican Qvevri. It's a region where innovation takes many forms. On the road from San Miguel to Dolores Hidalgo is Tres Raíces. Winemaker Aaron Huertas spent 15 years working in his home region of Rioja before taking an exploratory trip to the winery a few years ago. He became convinced that, with proper vineyard management, Guanajuato's soils and climate had the potential to make the best red wines in Mexico, and he took the job. In the last 2 years, it's become one of the country's most internationally awarded wineries, moving from a bodega known for poundable rosé to a premium wine producer using estate-grown grapes. In Spain, cultivation is impossible at over 1,000 meters, but at this latitude it becomes ideal, Huerta says, noting that Rioja's highest vineyards max out at under 3,000 feet, while the vineyards of Tres Raíces sit comfortably around 6,500 feet. We rarely get above 90 degrees in the hottest months or below 40 degrees in the winter, and the huge diurnal swing, sometimes exceeding 36 degrees Fahrenheit, creates very strong phenolics in terms of tannins, anthocyanins, color, and structure. A slow, gradual ripening in poor sandy loam soil yields very high-quality fruit. Driving 90 minutes southeast, you hit the mineral-rich volcanic soils of Querétaro state, which lies along the Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt. The population of the sprawling capital, Santiago de Querétaro, has doubled over the past 25 years, yet its cobblestone historic center remains one of Mexico's most beautiful and well-preserved. It's a good place for exploring the tiny state's wineries, its 7 so-called pueblos mágicos, or magic towns, officially designated for their culture and beauty. Jaime Niembro is the founder of Vinos Barragones, a natural winery that shares space with its distillery, working farm, and boutique hotel, Maria and Bernardo Hotel Boutique. Their restaurant, Barbaro, is one of Mexico's best and most charming. The outdoor tables sit among vineyards, gardens, and open-fire grills, cooking locally farmed meat. Plan an entire afternoon sipping away the day here. These are definitely special conditions, Niembro says, with a laugh, gesturing to the nets covering the vines. We get hail, then drought, for 8 months of the year and a semi-desert climate that's anything but predictable, but it gives us wines with zero intervention that have a ton of aromatic expression, that never get lost in a funky character, and highlight the typicity of the land. Vinos Barragones, flagship grape, Xarel·lo, playfully labeled as Xarel·lo, with other cava grapes, Macabeo and Paradella, are also planted. In the 1980s, Catalan cava juggernaut Freixenet chose Querétaro as its first production site outside of Spain, effectively launching the modern-day industry in the state. But Barragones' still white blend of Xarel·lo and Macabeo, with a touch of Grenache, with its explosive aromatics and crisp flavors that move from vivid citrus to tropical fruit, hardly resembles Freixenet's neutral bubbles. You can't understand viticulture in Querétaro without Freixenet. They're the pioneers in this field, provide advice, and still help bring grapes to Mexico, which explains the great Catalan influence here on what's planted, says Niembro. They are and will be the fathers of wine in Querétaro, and from here we've come as rebels who just want to explore and take our wines in other directions. Luis Aburto, of Tierra del Peña, is an architect turned winemaker whose bush vines thrive in the shadow of his winery namesake, Peña de Bernal, a phallic 1,500-foot monolith recognizable throughout Mexico. He maintains a closed-loop permanent permaculture system, captured rainwaters, grazing cows, companion planting, to maximize biodiversity and eliminate inputs and waste. His compost-rich soils sit atop a tepetate, aka tuff, or compacted volcanic debris, from which he makes wines that range from Syrah Rosé to a Merlot Tempranillo Cab blend to a Muscat Pet Nat. Freshness and minerality are common among the region's wines, but as with all Mexican wines, its diversity is its strength. There's no signature flavor to our wines because there are no signature grapes, no tradition to uphold, no winemaker grandparents to frustrate, says Aburo. When you're dogmatic, you don't question, so you don't learn. As long as we work in a way that benefits the land and the neighbors, it's ours to discover. It takes a village. Inside St. Jordan Kelleri, the high-altitude cooperative with an expansive vision for Swiss wine. Long ago, when legend was good as gospel, it said that an early frost one year destroyed the grape harvest in Valais, Switzerland. The people of this high alpine region, wedged between river valleys and mountains that rise up toward the Matterhorn, were already poor. With winter approaching, they turned to their bishop, Theodore, or Hodern in German, and begged for mercy. "Bring me a barrel," Hodern told them. When they did, Hodern filled it with his own wine, said a prayer, and blessed it. From that moment, the barrel gave freely. Wine poured for years, as good as any they had ever tasted, and the barrel never ran dry. Even after Hodern's death, the wine continued to flow. The bishop became a saint, and wine became the region's calling card. Today, nearly a third of the wine consumed in Switzerland comes from Valais. More than 20,000 growers farm nearly 12,000 acres of vineyards, and around 370 producers make about 15 million bottles annually. And St. Hodern's totemic presence still circulates among them. He is our patron saint of wine growers, says Michael Hock, the CEO and head winemaker of St. Hodern Kelleri. The winery holds the contested title of Europe's highest plots, carved up to 3,600 feet into the slopes outside the 1,000-year-old village of Vesperterminen. While altitude is novel, it's not an advantage. It only marks the starting point for St. Hodern, one of the most unique wineries in a region rich with understated traditions and undiscovered potential. For as much attention is paid to French or Italian wine, little is known about Swiss wine beyond its borders. With its ancient roots, cooperative model, and penchant for native varieties, including its hallmark, Haida, St. Hodern could help change that narrative. Pagan wine in the name of the saint. Founded in 1979, St. Hodern Kelleri is a cooperative with 643 members, around 500 of whom are currently active, all responsible for the grapes that go into the winery's 400,000 annual bottles. Every member has their own plots, and every member is also an owner, Hock says. So I answer to more than 600 owners, he adds with a laugh. Unlike most wine growers in Valais, they don't specialize in Pinot Noir, Chasselas, or Arvin. They mostly grow Haida, better known as Sauvignon Blanc, which is closer to Gewürztraminer than Sauvignon Blanc. No one knows how long Haida has been in Vesperminen. It's the only written trace you find is from around the year 1500, Hock says. He suspects it could be much older. In the Upper Valais dialect, Haida means ancient, from pagan times. In some records, the grape is also called païen, a French word meaning pagan. That suggests it could have grown here even before the Romans brought viticulture to the region. Since 1500 at least, the villagers of Vesperterminen have grown Haida on the southeast-facing slopes where it benefits from the region's 300 sunny days each year. Today, centuries-old stone retaining walls keep the plots in place. While they are a beautiful reminder of a treasured tradition, they also require regular maintenance. A landslide once wiped out 200 of them. The damage cost something like 4 million francs, or $5 million US dollars, Hock says. And with the slope so steep, all the work in the vineyard from pruning to irrigation and harvesting must be done by hand. Despite these challenges, Vesperterminen's winemaking tradition is stronger than ever. Hock is quick to credit the co-op. Not only does it allow St. Hodern to focus on quality over sales, but it also reinforces the community's identity. Our members are not professional farmers. This is something they do on the side. They get some money, but they do it for traditional reasons. He tells me as we admire nearly 110 acres of terrace plots, curving around sheer ridges, framing a wall of snow-capped mountains where the Vispa and Rhone rivers meet. To keep members motivated, Hock says he pays above market prices. If we don't recognize the work they do with a good price, they might stop. Part of it is competition, too. Everyone wants to keep up with their neighbors. While Haida is now grown across all of Valais, these varying incentives have helped St. Hodern's community of grape growers stand out from the expanding crowd. I often tell my colleagues it's not easy to say we have the best Haida because this is always personal, but that the original is here, no one can doubt that. A white that acts like a red. Inside the winery, Hock ushers me into a timber-lined room that Swiss companies and tourist groups regularly book for events and tastings. Under black and white photos of Visper Terminen, we taste the products he hopes will draw new attention to Swiss wine. Haida is a white that almost behaves like a red. It's fresh, aromatic, and acidic, but full-bodied, he explains, as he pours the straw-colored wine, then pours another bottle of Haida aged in acacia barrels. Hock attributes these qualities to the moraines left by glaciers that moved through Switzerland eons ago. There's almost no clay. It's really poor soil that's great for wine, he says. All the wines we taste have significant minerality, from Haida to the Gamay. More importantly, they're impeccable. That is a credit to Hock, who studied winemaking and worked in the Piedmont before joining St. Hodern in 2014. When he takes me on a tour of the facilities, it occurs to me that he's something of an acolyte of modern technology, and his endless pursuit of self-improvement could be a catalyst that takes the winery further than ever. Last year, the winery completed significant upgrades, installing a heat pump system to power 81 large tanks designed for gravity-fed winemaking, all top of the line. As we navigate the maze of the facility's interiors, Hock shows me his computerized labs, where he tests the wine as if he were a biologist working at Lonza, the pharmaceutical giant with headquarters nearby. He whisked me into another room to show me some recently installed software. It tells you the percentage of grapes that every member contributed to the bottle, he says. It's one of the many ways St. Hodern keeps its members invested and helps pass down pride to the next generation, which might be the least stable variable the winery faces. Every generation declares the next generation will be the one to stop. Then the next generation takes over. Somehow it keeps going, but you have to work for it, he explains. Hock leads me past the new $1,400 an hour bottling line through to the on-site restaurant where a local company will have a Christmas party in a couple hours, and back to the tasting room. There I see an image of St. Hodern mounted on the devil, keeping watch over a pyramid of wood boxes filled with Haida. A couple of years ago, Hock began exporting, making St. Hodern bottles among the 1% of wines leaving Switzerland each year. Today they are in Spain, Norway, and Belgium. They were in the U.S. before the tariffs and will likely come back soon. More than 1,500 years after a beneficent bishop bound the region's fortunes to wine, the co-op that carries his name is beginning to test how far it can go beyond Valais. What keeps everything together is this spirit of cooperation, Hock says. We are really proud of what we're doing. Everyone in the community is part of this project. Is everyone a sommelier now? If every discipline uses the title, it starts to lose all meaning. When did everybody who's good at something become a sommelier? I've always understood a sommelier to be a wine professional with deep knowledge about how wine is made, stored, and served. Wine is a key part of the definition. It would be redundant to talk about a wine somm, like saying chai tea or fish aquarium. But lately it seems like the entire world has been ensommified. The way I see it, it all started with other drinks experts claiming the honorific. There's a water sommelier, a cider sommelier, make that pommelier. Sake, tea, and coffee experts, they get to be somms too. But why stop at drinks? There are now somms for olive oil and hot sauce. Bring on mustard, honey, and cheese somms, why not? Seafood seems to be particularly fertile territory, with fish and oyster somms popping up now. Now anyone who curates anything is claiming the title. There are people out there calling themselves book sommeliers, board game sommeliers, scent sommeliers, and travel sommeliers. Why does everyone want to use this particular title anyway? It is a cool word, and that's part of the appeal, posits Ren Newman, beverage director at the NYC outpost of Printemps, the French department store. Sommelier carries cultural weight. it sounds authoritative, signals specialization, and is just French enough to confer prestige. Because this title signifies rigor and deep knowledge, she adds, calling someone a somm frames them as a guide, not just an enthusiast. Yet the origin of the word isn't sexy. Merriam-Webster dates it to Middle French, when a sommelier was responsible for loading cargo onto beasts of burden. The word may have derived from sommier, Old French for pack animal. Anyone who's spent 5 minutes in a restaurant's back of house dealing with boxes of booze recognizes some truth there. Later, the word evolved to mean a person who managed food and drinks for a nobleman, and by the 1820s, a sommelier had become a wine steward at a restaurant. Formal credentials like certified sommelier or master sommelier are a more recent development, beginning in Europe in the 1950s and 60s. But it was the 2012 documentary Somm, which follows 4 wine stewards as they prepare for the Master Sommelier exam, plus the 3 installments that followed, that ushered the word into the popular lexicon. 10 years ago, I still had to explain what a sommelier was, says Amy Racine, beverage director and partner at JF Restaurants. Now the pendulum has swung the other way. So now that everyone knows what a somm is, they want to be one too. But should they be allowed to use the honorific? No, says Theo Lieberman, an advanced sommelier and director of operations at New York City's Estrella and Altro Paradiso. I don't call myself a wine doctor. Call yourself something else. He lauds cicerones, certified beer pros, for properly naming their expertise. If beer experts can come up with their own term, why can't oyster experts be more creative? Let's find a better way to describe these pros that don't cannibalize and potentially erode trust in the wine industry. Not everyone needs to be, or should be, called a sommelier. Sommelier means wine. Best of the Wurst. How to link German sausages and wine. The German sausage-making tradition dates back over 1,000 years, and sources claim there are over 1,000 regional styles. There are also over 1,000 breweries in Germany, providing endless options for classic pairing of brats and beer. Yet sausage and wine connoisseurs know how refreshing the right pairing can be. Wine is generally less filling than beer, and has the acidity needed to cut the rich fat in sausages. For a fun meat lovers group dinner, serve a sausage flight with condiments and simple sides like sauerkraut, vinegar-based potato salad, and green beans charred in bacon fat. To complete the lineup with a variety of wines, to find your own favorite pairings. Bratwurst. This fresh, fatty pork sausage has many regional variants and remains the most iconic sausage in both Germany and among the German Americans. Despite its rich texture, don't crush its flavor with a heavy red. Instead, German Trollinger, aka Schiava or Vernach, in Italy and Switzerland, is light-bodied and low in tannins, with notes of raspberries and violets, and a crisp acidity to cut the brat's unctuous juices. However, if you're loading up on traditional toppings like mustard and sauerkraut, reach for a Gruner Veltliner, which pairs well with cabbage and pickled fermented flavors. Weisswurst. Veal-based Weisswurst, white sausage, has a fine texture and is usually subtly spiced with warm flavors like nutmeg, cardamom, ginger, and lemon zest. A fresh wheat beer always pairs well, but for a similar effect, try the German sparkling wine Sekt. Look for the designations VDP Sekt and VDP Sekt-Prestige, which, as of 2021, require estate-grown grapes, traditional bottle fermentation, and extended leased aging. The balance and depth and richness are against brisk acidity is a winner with this most delicate of sausages. Frankfurter. Technically, the Frankfurter Würstchen, a slim, lightly smoked and lightly spiced pork sausage from Frankfurt, is a protected designation, with similar dogs being merely Frankfurter style. This is where traditional hot dog comes from. These pre-cooked sausages are traditionally simmered rather than grilled and can taste surprisingly light. Apfelwein, apple wine, a very tart and dry hard apple cider, is both a typical pairing and the correct one. Try Postmann Frankfurter Apfelwein, a Frankfurt-style cider available in the U.S., or a Spanish Sidra, or a very dry artisanal domestic cider. Braunschweiger Liverwurst. In the U.S., most liverwurst, liver sausage, is Braunschweiger, a smooth, smoked pork liver sausage that can be sliced or spread straight from the package. Oak tannins and high alcohol can make liver sausage taste bitter or metallic. Look instead for pure fruit and yes, acidity. Red fans can pick a soft and cherry juicy Austrian Zweigelt, but again, Germany has the perfect Venice solution, reminiscent of the classic pairing of foie gras and sauterne. Braunschweiger, with an off-dry Riesling labeled Halbtrocken or fine herb, is revelatory even for people who don't think they're liverwurst fans. Look for bottlings from Nahe or Rheingau. Mac and Skins, a comfort food classic with an alpine twist. There are few dishes as satisfying as macaroni and cheese, but it doesn't exclusively belong to the American South or need to be orange. Alpermangronen, which translates as alpine macaroni in Swiss German, is a prime example of Swiss alpine cuisine. The hearty pot of pasta and potatoes enrobed in gooey Gruyere is similar to Swiss-adjacent dishes like Käsespätzle of southern Germany and Pizzoccheri of Valtellina in northern Italy. Feel free to add small cubes of bacon or speck to the crispy onions, but don't skip the applesauce. In your largest skillet, heat oil over medium heat. Toss sliced onions and flour and add to the pan in a single layer. Cook, stirring occasionally until brown and crispy. Set aside. Bring a large pot of salted water to boil, add the potatoes, then return the water to a boil and add the ziti or elbow macaroni. Boil until both are tender, about 10 to 12 minutes. While they cook, bring cream and nutmeg to a simmer in a small saucepan. Drain the potatoes and pasta, then return them to the pot with the cream. Stir in shredded Gruyere by the handful until it's melted and creamy throughout. Season with salt and pepper to taste if needed. Transfer to a hot serving dish, top with onions, and serve hot with warmed applesauce on the side. This is Steve, and I've been reading from Wine Enthusiast magazine.